I haven't done the draft pick videos for a while. And I had this list made up, I want to say at least a month ago. Probably more than a month ago. But I want to do this, and I want to start the day with this. And I'm waiting for other newsy kind of things to happen. Because as we head into training camp, there is some newsworthy stuff going on. But this morning's been slow. It's Sunday and all. But there's NFL, so for anybody who's wondering about football, yeah, there'll be some football talk on the Entertainment Guy channel later. But it's early enough in the day that I can get these videos that I want to get done. Ranking the number 7 overall draft picks. So these are the top 15 number 7 overall draft picks. Obviously, I'm not going to include the guys who haven't played yet or guys who just started. Guys got 1 year in, they're not going to end up on the chart because we don't know where their career is going to end up, and I'm not going to bump a guy out who had a 10 or 15 year career in favor of a guy who's been around for 1 year because you just don't know. Number 15 on the list. Darrel Sidor, who was an LA draft pick in 1990. Sidor had a long career. It wasn't a highly decorated career. He's not remembered as being a dominant defenseman at either end of the ice. But honestly, very solid career, played for a very long time. So he gets on the list. Also going with LA at 14, although he was not an LA King, not known as an LA King property, he's known for being traded for Gretzky, and that's Marty Gelinas, number 7 draft pick by the LA Kings in 1988. And I will discuss Marty Gelinas in the history video that I'm going to post this morning. Gelinas, solid player, 20 goal scorer, sometimes 30. One of those guys that when you needed a big game goal, he'd show up. He was a big game guy. And nothing but respect and an admiration for Marty Gelinas from this guy. Number 13. Ulf Dahlin, who was drafted by the New York Rangers in 1985. And Dahlin isn't really remembered as a Ranger either. For me, his time in Dallas is what stands out. But that makes sense because I'm a Dallas fan. Ulf Dahlin, very, very solid defensive forward who could also chip in goals. If Jonathan Dahlin becomes anywhere near what Ulf Dahlin was in his prime, you've got yourself a pretty darn good player. But, we'll see. And choosing between Dahlin and Gelinas, it just came down to, I think Dahlin was better overall forward throughout his career. Number 12. Nazem Kadri, Toronto Maple Leafs, 2009. I may not be a fan of everything Nazem Kadri does or says, but Nazem Kadri's an excellent forward. 30 goal scorer this past season. And while he may or may not get 30 again this year when he gets dropped down to third line minutes, he has still had an excellent enough career that I have him at 12. And I went back and forth when I initially did this list on whether to have him at 11. Because at 11, I've got Jeff Skinner, who was drafted by Carolina in 2010. And for me, it just comes down to if I'm starting a team and I can pick one or the other, I would probably take Skinner, but it's close. So you could argue Kadri at 11 over Skinner. You could argue Skinner over Kadri for different reasons. I think Skinner will score more goals than Kadri this coming season. But again, it's close, and when their careers are all said and done, Kadri could end up a lot higher than this. At number 10, Jakub Voracek, who was drafted by Columbus in 2007. Voracek now, of course, of the Flyers. Very solid forward, high point production at times. Very streaky. Voracek's very streaky, but when he's hot, he's pretty damn hard to stop. He really is. Number 9. Russ Courtnall, who was drafted by Toronto in 1983. So not all Toronto draft picks from the 80s were necessarily flops. That was the reputation the team had at the time. That was a Fred Boimstruck thing more than anything, though. Courtnall went on to have a pretty damn solid career. And wasn't remembered as much for what he did in Toronto as for what he did elsewhere, but still. Courtnall, excellent career. And again, this is a measurement of career. So if anybody's like, well, Voracek's a better player than Courtnall. Courtnall was pretty damn good in his day. One of the fastest skaters in the league at his prime. Really excellent player. Number 8. Jason Arnott, Edmonton Oilers. I believe it said 1993. When you look up a player who gets better as he gets older, you should find a picture of Jason Arnott. Right up to the end of his career, Arnott just kept getting more impressive. His totals were insane. And I was not a fan of Arnott when he first came into the league. I thought he was underwhelming. I thought that Edmonton just had this endless string of first-round picks that were okay or abysmal, depending on who you're looking at. Arnott ended up becoming an excellent forward throughout the rest of his career. Played in a lot of locations, drafted originally by Edmonton, and played his best hockey elsewhere because, again, as he got older, he just kept getting better. Number 7. Mark Scheifele, when he was drafted by Winnipeg in 2011, to some it felt like it was kind of a reach. Maybe he should have been drafted later. Maybe Winnipeg took him a little bit early. But history shows that Winnipeg made a fantastic decision, and there were teams that drafted ahead of Scheifele who maybe, in retrospect, wish they got him instead. Scheifele is an explosive talent for Winnipeg, and over the last 2 years, I've been talking a lot about how impressed I am with him every time I watch Winnipeg play. And I really believe that at some point when Wheeler's moved on, it's going to be his team. And I know Laine is going to be the explosive, probably 50-goal scorer, but Scheifele is going to be the glue guy, I think, that holds the team together. Fantastic scorer, regardless of whether he's ever a captain or not. He's a fantastic scorer. Number 6. This one's going to cause some people to say, wait, what? Ken Lensman's remembered as being a rat. And when he was drafted by Philly in 1978, it was because he was challenging the idea that at age 13, he couldn't be drafted. He wanted to play hockey at age 18. He wanted to play in the NHL. He challenged the draft, and he won. He won the right to be drafted at 18. So when we talk about some excellent drafts at the end of the 70s, it's part of the reason why, because the draft got younger. So instead of waiting until a guy's 19, you have all these excellent 18 and 19-year-olds mixed together. Lensman was a much better player than what history will remember him being. And I look at Brad Marchand and I say he could end up being that cautionary tale. That you could be an excellent forward, you can put up great point totals, but if your controversial plays outweigh all the rest of it, that's what you become known for. Lensman he was an excellent player, but he was a rat. And that's how he's remembered. Number 5. I expect some feedback on this just because there's going to be a lot of people watching this that haven't watched Blaine Stoughton. He was drafted by Pittsburgh in 1973. Kind of hosed that he played a lot. He played in the WHA and he put up a bunch of points. If he played his whole career in the NHL, we might be looking at a Hall of Famer here. But he didn't. But he scored 50 goals with some woeful Hartford Whalers teams in the NHL. And he was an excellent player. He just, again, during that era where you had the WHA and all those totals just don't count in the NHL record books, obviously. Guys like Stoughton are kind of pushed aside. And to me, his 50 goals When he left the league, it was kind of quick. So when the descent started from that 50-goal level to being out of the league, it was quick. But he was an excellent player. He was one of my favorites at the time when I was a little kid watching hockey, and he put up a ton of points and goals. So, and again, for a Hartford Whalers team that you can't say, oh, well, he got that, but that's because he played with, insert name of player here. He was around before Ron Francis, so it's not a Ron Francis thing. Number 4. You know, the 2003 entry draft is still probably the best overall. Because guys like Ryan Souter are available at number 7, taken by Nashville. And Souter has accomplished a ton in his career. And the funny thing with Souter is that when he left Nashville and he was going to Minnesota, the expectation was, well, he relied a lot on Shea Weber. So when he's the main guy, it's going to show that he's not that good. He's a good defenseman, but a lot of what you saw of him in Nashville was because he played with Weber. When he went to Minnesota, I would argue that it affected Weber more than it affected Souter. Souter still put up tremendous totals with Minnesota and was a Norris candidate in his own right. And Weber, I don't know, he was still an excellent defenseman, but I think he missed Souter. I do. Excellent defenseman. He's had a great career. I don't know if he ends up in the Hall. He'd have to be around for quite a while to end up in the Hall, but we've had that discussion recently about a number of players, so why not kindle it here? Number 3, talking about players that were around forever. Shane Doan was drafted by Winnipeg in 1995. And the longevity of his career is crazy. And that it was played with that one organization. From when they were in Winnipeg till they moved to Arizona every year until the 2016-17 season. Shane Doan is, of course, the closest you're going to have to a hero in Arizona Coyote fan circles. And I say that because the Arizona Coyotes haven't had a tremendous amount of success, so the number of players who can be qualified as heroes is going to be diminished. But nothing can diminish what Doan was. Now, Hall of Fame, no, I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame personally, but he played a long time. And if he'd managed to find a way to play a little bit more, we might be talking about 1,000 points for him, but that didn't happen, and still an excellent career for him. Number 2. There's a book that just came out on this guy, which is funny because before the book came out, I had this list already all written up. 1976, the St. Louis Blues at 7th overall select Bernie Federico. Bernie Federico, I remember in the 80s as being one of those players who could put up 100 points, put up 30 goals in his sleep, but it was the early 80s. So he got overlooked. He scored 1,000 points and still pretty overlooked. Finished his career with Detroit and he was overlooked because it was the 80s. This is the era of Gretzky, and then, of course, Gretzky and Lemieux together. And so whatever Federico did, pretty much ignored for that time period. But if you look at it, I would argue that Federico was an excellent player. When you look at the teams he played with, they weren't always excellent, and yet his point totals were always pretty darn good. Number 1, and I went back and forth on this when I initially wrote this one up. But you know what? I figured, yeah, sure, we'll do this. I'll suffer the slings and arrows after. For me, Bill Barber leads this list. Stanley Cup playoff success. He's a big game player. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's one of those iconic Philadelphia Flyer players. And honestly, while he was not one of the meaner of the Broad Street Bullies by any stretch, he could play any part of the game. And he's the one that when I hear about, well, why is Lindros in the Hall of Fame? Why is Neely? Why is Bure? I kind of point at Barber and say, hey, Barber went in there. And he went in there without tremendous overall totals in his career, but they understood what he brought to the game. So for me, Bill Barber's number one. I could see an argument for Federico at number one. Again, this is just my personal opinion. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Again, if there's a brand new player that's not on this list, that's why he's not on this list. So anybody over the last couple of years that you don't see on this list, that's why. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.